Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons as I conclude my conversation with Bruce Davison. Please welcome back, Bruce. I wanted to, just because I get asked the question, back to the Waltons for a second. What was your sense, or your sense now, about this tradition of a shivaree?
Well, so many of these country traditions are still with us to this day. And it's always the guys that have to, prove it. So it's like, prove yourself a man. Prove yourself. If you want to go through this, you've got it. It goes back to the Stone Age. You bring me the skin of a lion that you've killed with a spear, and you become this bigger person. And the chivalry owes to that. I mean, it owes to the old male tradition of, okay, we're going to put you in a situation that you're really going to have to fight your way out of to prove you're a man.
Mm.
And in the wedding situation, it can be more lighthearted, but it's still based on that same sort of, okay, prove yourself. Let's see you prove yourself. So that's sort of what the chivalry was in the Waltons. And this stuck-up guy coming into this country existence isn't aware of anything, and it's a totally unknown world to him. He's in love with his wife, and that's where she comes from, and that's who her people are, but he has no idea. He's completely lost in the jungle. So when this comes along, he doesn't take it too well. Doesn't handle it with the best tradition.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't, because I was so young when we did the episode and I'd never heard of that as a tradition. And it's like, okay, here's a script and we're doing it. But then when I look back at it now and look at characters, particularly like John Boy, how he was so engaged and thought it was all great. And, these times when it seems like contradictions within our characters that have been established on a show. And yet I always think that we as people have so many sides to ourselves that we are not always from the outside predictable. So when Richard...
What was wonderful about Earl Hamner and his writing, because he gave each of you an opportunity to emerge as a person. As you grew up, he gave you that opportunity to have those conflicts that are typical. And he would take each one of the characters and you could see something about them in their growth that would happen. I remember even little Cammy coming up, and suddenly she's faced with growing older and how everyone responds to that. I mean, the heart of Earl Hamner's writing was always family, and it was about real people that existed in his life somewhere in there, because it all had that, genuine feeling that these people are truly someone we know. And that was the key to the show as well. We know these people. We know what they're going through. We know what they feel, because we're doing it too. We're going through the same kind of thing. I was lucky. I just did a film has a similar feel to it. It was written by somebody. It's called 25 Miles to Normal, and it's basically the estrangement between his son and his father, and a divorced home, and how people always really fall into patterns and feel about each other. And I thought of the Waltons when I was doing it, because it had the same genuine feeling of family in it. These are real people. These are real consequences that they're going through.
Yeah. Did you have a chance to work on any other projects of Earl's after?
Of which?
Earl. Anything?
Earl? No, I didn't. I worked with Richard a lot. We did a lot of stuff together. In fact, when we did a play called Streamers that you mentioned earlier, and one night in the middle of it, it's a tale and you meet these three guys waiting to go to Vietnam, and they're kids and they're young and they've got all these things going on, and it ends in the second act, suddenly out of nowhere, somebody's stabbed and starts to bleed to death on stage. And we watched this happen. And at least once a week, somebody would pass out in the audience, and they'd have to scream for, help. My husband, because it was after Vietnam, and it got so one night during the course of this, Richard, who got stabbed, kicked and broke his toe on the bed in the middle of, he could flail around a bit. And he ended up across the street at UCLA in the emergency room, and he was and another guy in the audience had passed out, and they took him over there, and he was sitting in the bed next to Richard. He woke up, he said, "How'd the play end?"
He's like, "I lived."
Yeah, no, right, I live here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now that third actor in the show, because I think it was an actor I knew. Was it Richard Lawson or something?
Yes, Richard Lawson.
Okay.
There were a bunch of, and Herb Jefferson were two other actors in it. Also, Charlie Durning was in it.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, he was. He became a good friend over the years. Poker playing buddy.
Yeah.
And he had a great lesson for me too. One time, because I remember I was sitting with, I think, him and George Siegel and Michael Lerner and myself at this game, and we were bitching and complaining about having to drive all the way down to Newport Beach to sit on a bench for an hour to put ourselves on videotape for some 19-year-old girl who didn't know who any of us were, and we're all kidding. And then Charlie Durning looks up from his cards and he says, "Gives you a chance to act." And I still carry that with me, because Charlie was, Charlie Durning was an incredible war hero. I mean, he got shot up on the first wave at Omaha Beach. And
wow.
Hand-to-hand combat. I'd say, "How can you cry like that every night?" He says, "Think about my life." You don't learn about that until you're older.
Wow. Yeah. Well, do you have having done a ton of film and television and also a lot of stage, do you have a preference? I know Richard loves doing theater.
Theater, yeah. Well, Richard has spent a lot more time on theater. In fact, I watched Richard do Peer Gynt, which is the longest speaking play ever written. And I watched him do that, and he just is incredible. Well, he's always a good egg, too. He's always great. You're safe with Richard.
Yeah.
Stage and in film.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody, I think, more generous that I've worked with than Richard.
Yeah. No, I learned so many lessons from being around him and getting to work with him for all those years that I think a lot of us did. The younger cast, it's sort of, if you're going to want to emulate somebody, it was, it was him. It was his work ethic and his total commitment to every scene, on or off. If he was off camera, he didn't walk through it when it was your close up, because
no, exactly. And he did it in a generous, gentle way. I've been with other actors who, are great, but sometimes they gotta, they're very pushy with the youngsters and kids to get what they want. It's kind of a savage business for somebody young growing up. And that's what, I often wondered what your experience was going through that. You were certainly the eldest of the other children, but it must have been quite an experience to go through that, especially with the directors that you would meet from week to week.
Yeah. I had me and a few of the others, like I had started when I was about 6 or 7. And I had done a fair bit of theater. I was with a repertory company for about 3 years, right before the Waltons. An actor, Jonathan Daly, I don't know if you ever crossed paths with him. Yeah. Yes. So Jonathan ran this little sort of theater company that was also like an acting class. And so my sister was in the company for a while, but I was like the only child in the company. And I had originally worked with him. He directed a production of Wait Until Dark, and I was the little girl in it. And then he invited me to join this company that he had, and he would write the plays and direct them for the company. So we had a little tiny, whatever, less than 99 seat, a little 60 seat house or something.
Yeah.
And when we weren't doing a show, he would have classes, and then he would write material for the people in the class, so that he was always working on giving us new challenges. So I'd had all that wonderful experience before I came to the Waltons, which, of course, theater is such a great training ground as an actor.
Yeah.
But, then you start doing a TV series. And as a teenager, I think the toughest thing was more not the work itself, but as a person dealing with all of it. And, I went through the believing my own press and being very important and, having to kind of get smacked back down to go, hey, you're a little full of yourself and get over yourself, so those types of lessons, which I think, I don't know if they're any easier as an adult, but I found it challenging as a young person to go through that part of it.
Yeah. Well, so did I. And I was older. I was in my 20s, and it's very tough, not really knowing what you're doing yet, but getting all of this praise and everything for it. And then suddenly, where'd that go?
Yeah.
And that's a tough one. I met so many child actors in the course of the business too. One I became good friends with was Tony Dow.
Oh, yeah. I worked with Tony. Yeah.
Leave It to Beaver.
We did theater together. We did theater together. Yeah.
Yes. Well, he became a great director too. He directed a lot of shows on Harry and the Hendersons, but he told me how tough that was being a child actor. And he was part of a group, Paul
Peterson.
Paul Peterson run. And it was, so being a child actor is not all, is not everything it's cracked up to be. And,
we felt lucky to have each other on the show, that there were 6 of us, and to go through some of those difficult times. It was a soft landing place because of the safety of that environment. And, I could have those sorts of things, and it gave me a place to get through it, recognize that really wasn't the path forward. Whereas if I'd just been doing other jobs, I might have been fired, and, it's like, we don't want to deal with you.
Cry, I'll teach you to cry. But it must have been tough. I can imagine. Well, how long did the Waltons run? How many years was it?
9 seasons.
9 seasons.
Yeah.
That's a long time for a child. And a lot went up to do within it. It's good you had the other kids with you. And I think the difference is always in the directors. Lots of times directors are coming in. They're like the new person too, lots of times, unless you find the right guy to keep doing, or the right woman to keep, working with that. But I've often felt for children that I've had to work with, what must they be going through?
Now, you didn't, you did, was Harry and the Hendersons kind of the longest you spent on a single show?
72 episodes. And nobody's ever seen it now because it was all divided up between, I guess, Amblin and CBS and so many other people, and everybody gets a cut. So it doesn't play anymore anywhere because it's not cost effective.
Wow.
Who was it? Kurt Vonnegut that says, humanity will be destroyed because it's not cost effective.
Yeah. Was it, you didn't do series after series after series as a series regular. Was that something you would have liked to have done, or?
Well, it depends on the series, really, and there's not a lot that I'd like to get sucked into for a long time. I did do a Stephen King series that didn't go past the first year, but it was a good series. But Stephen got hit by a car and was in an oxygen tent and everything else through a lot of it. So things that didn't quite gel weren't able to be fixed. And it has some brilliant stuff in it, but it's very sporadic. But I shot that up in Vancouver called Kingdom Hospital.
Okay.
But we've, remained friends over the years. And I really, in fact, he has a painting of mine.
Oh.
And he's his stuff is much more insular. It's miniseries mostly and stuff based on so many of his books. Mm-hmm. But that could have gone, I thought, but that didn't last. We were on a big network too, so the chopping block is a lot closer.
Yeah.
The bigger networks than what exists now. I mean, now, everything's out there.
Yeah.
So shows can be done and be done and continue.
Yeah.
It's not up to the big three.
Right. Which makes more room for other things and specialty sort of projects and doesn't have to appeal to as broad a demographic. And
right.
Yeah. But it comes with its challenges too. Now, along the way, you also started doing some directing.
Yes, as a matter of fact, and I'm so sorry that you got your face was cut out on that scene, because I had a great idea of the parents fighting, but it was about the children, and we had a situation where it was supposed to be outside, and we were shooting Florida,
right?
Vancouver.
Yes.
So I had 2 palm trees I kept moving around called Sven and Bjorn.
I love it.
And there's only one flat place there, and it's next to the airport. So, and I was working with Hume Cronyn, who was 94 time, and got an Emmy nomination for it, I might say.
Yes, and didn't you win?
I was nominated. I was nominated as best director, but it was nominated for 5 of them, and it won 3.
Yeah, this for the audience. This is a really sweet TV movie called Off Season that I was one of the last things I shot up in Vancouver before I moved back to the States. And
right.
I mean, it was lovely. Yeah, it rained. What I remember for me, because I was there.
That's what happened. We were all supposed to do this outside with you and your husband at each other's throats, fighting, and the kids just sitting in the corner. But we were inside, so it had to take place on the stairwell. Yeah. And so all I could do was hear the fight in the background affecting the little girl. And I'm sorry, because I
mean, it's as you said, it always a chance to act. So I was just happy to be included and happy to get to work with you again. And just disappointed we didn't get to do more together.
I would have loved that.
Yeah,
I would have loved that. And Hume was saying that pool has got to be 84 degrees or I'm not stepping into it, because I'm 94 years old and I'm not going to die of pneumonia on a movie of the week.
Yeah, I don't blame him. But it was one of those funny, you've probably had those days as an actor. I was on set about 12 hours. We started off, we were supposed to do the pool. So it's like, they got me ready for the pool. And then like, it's raining, we got to move to the studio. So it's like, okay, go there. And then it's like, okay, we're going to do this scene instead. So change your clothes. Okay, wait. No, we're going to do this instead. I must have changed my clothes 5 times before they went, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because they were clearly working on the fly. And so I I did a lot of hanging around, kept changing my clothes.
I was trying to make that whole scene work with 5 people. And suddenly I only had one little set to do it in, instead of this whole vast swimming pool.
No, totally understand.
So that's the way.
I just watched it again recently. And it's such a sweet little movie. I mean, it's that whole sort of take on Miracle on 34th Street.
Yes. I tried the director one, and he was very nice. He thanked me. He said, "Thank you so much for not making sugar as a spice to honey," because it was a very sentimental story, and I didn't want to, slather that on. I wanted to pull it back a little bit and make the people as real as possible.
Yeah.
Like I
No, I
say,
thought it was very clever and, and really well done. So congratulations,
well, thank you.
Something I noticed when I rewatched Off Season recently was in the credits that you were one of the co-writers of that lovely song that she
Oh,
sang.
yes. Yes. Well, I wanted to use I Remember You, and we couldn't use that because they didn't have the money. So I sat down with the songwriter, who is a wonderful man, and his sister had this idea, and we all sort of worked it out together on something. I got to give him most of the credit, but it was I wanted that feeling. I wanted her to be singing about her dead sister.
Yeah.
And somebody who meant so much to her in the past, because she's raising that child now, and the child is lost. And yes. So I
Was that your one and done on songwriting, or have you written other songs?
Well, I have actually on the guitar, but they're sort of nothing I've ever published or anything. I've thrown a few ideas at people like Lyle Lovett and things, but people that I've worked with, on film that I know. But I got a couple. In there.
Well, you have a little bit of a musical history as well, having done the film version of Mame. And did you sing in that, or
yes,
the movie?
Yes, I did. Okay. I did, and I didn't. I didn't get to sing "You're My Best Girl" because Jerry Herman didn't think I could fulfill it at the time. I thought I could, but so I just sing one song in it. Da 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 da. So I'm that, but I would have loved to have sung "My Best Girl" to Lucy.
Yeah. How was that experience working on Mame
with Lucy?
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, one of my friends, when I first came to LA, when I first came out in those Manson years, as I call them, I guess, was Dino and Desi. And Billy. They had a little group of group that time, but I would hang out with Dino and Desi, and their parents would be at the Daisy. There was a club called the Daisy there, and we went there and we'd hang out. And Dino would say, "Don't let this town get to you, kid," when he's 17, and Desi and I were all friends, and I got up to go to the bathroom one time, and this older man got up and pulled the chair back. He says, "Do you kids need anything?" And I said, "No, Mr. Sinatra, we're fine. Just going to the bathroom." and Lucy would be in the back room playing not Parcheesi, but backgammon. She'd be playing backgammon all the time there. So when Mame came along, she said, "My son says you're a good actor, so you got the part." And the first take that I had, and they'd been shooting for 8 months or something out with the horses, and it was after Beauregard, and I play the elder Patrick.
Right.
And I come up from the bottom of the steps, and Patrick Beau had died, and I put my arms around her and I say, "I love you, Auntie Mame." And I just turn and I walk back down. The director says, "Okay, good, that's a print." And she said, "I didn't believe it." Oh God, I'm in for it now. Here we go. This is going to be a long shoot. So I go down to the stairs. I go back down the stairs. I get her and I grab her by the shoulder and I say, "I love you." And walk away. And I hear her go, "I knew you had it in you." Well, that's how things worked with that. And she was a little girl of 7 years old and a truck driver all at the same time. And I thought, this last film that Aaron Sorkin did, he caught her to a T. I mean, Nicole Kidman was brilliant. People don't really know what a brilliant performance that was, but she had Lucy down pat with the elbows and the everything in the meetings and stuff. And she was Lucy, because that was Lucy. Lucy could be this frail little girl or this wonderful clown, or she could be, hey, Jesus, how you doing up there? She knew the guys up in the rafters with the lights. How's Johnny? How's your son? She formed this studio. I mean, she formed the business. She formed Desilu Studios, and she ran the show. So she always ran the show, but at the same time, she was this frail little girl too. Sometimes she would come in crying one day to make up, and she'd leave, and I'd say to the makeup artist, I said, what's going on? He says, don't ever get married.
Oh.
So, it was all kinds of. She was a very complex person, and I really did love her. I really loved her very much, because she was right. Everybody and she was a woman, and back in those days, women weren't always right. They never could be allowed to be right.
Yeah,
and she could.
Yeah.
She could say, I didn't believe it. Do it again.
Now, speaking of women, you said you have a daughter who is acting now. How's that?
I got to show you this. Okay. Can I show you this?
Absolutely.
All right. I will. Okay, just to give you.
How sweet. Oh, what a beautiful voice she has.
Yeah, she does. It's scary. It really freaked me out, because I had no idea that she could do that, because she stays in the garage and she does not want any help, doesn't want any help, doesn't want any advice. It's like everything else. She never walked. She just got up one day and ran across the room. Or swimming. She would never go near the water, put her toe in until she jumped in and swam across the thing. She's just like that.
Wow.
So
she's doing a production of Mary Poppins.
Well, she was. Then she did Chicago. She played Belma, and now she's down at a place called Jack's Theatricals downtown, and she's doing Wizard of Oz. She's playing Dorothy.
Oh, wow.
She's going to be singing Over the Rainbow.
Oh.
So.
How sweet. So obviously you don't give her advice because she doesn't want advice.
She doesn't want advice, very rarely. And it's very interesting, because I told you that other story about Henry Fonda giving me acting advice, and I ran into Jane Fonda. I told her that story one time. She said, why didn't he ever tell me that? And I said, well, you were his daughter, and that's difficult. I was just a schmuck actor, on the K Mutiny court martial. It's very delicate, because my daughter, being the opposite, she doesn't want that information. She wants to prove herself first, and she'll get around a little later once she knows the ropes and what she's doing as an actress and stuff. But it's tough being a parent to somebody who wants to do what you want to do, and because your heart breaks because you've been through it, you know what lies ahead. But if somebody has the passion like that, there's no stopping them. And she does have that. She just has a passion for doing it. My son, on the other hand, nothing to do with it. I don't even want to see the stage. I'm the audience. You're the.
Well, are there things like that are still on your bucket list, things that you'd still like to do, type roles you'd like to play, things, whether it's acting stuff or just
it's a role,
adventures?
whether it's a role on stage or whether it's a role on film or TV or whatever. It always depends on the journey of the actor.
Mhm.
It's interesting now. I remember Jack Lemmon when I worked with him on Shortcuts saying, "There's no parts for older guys now. There's no part for older guys who are stars.
Mm.
All kinds of parts for older guys who are supporting actors. I mean, you're the doctor, you're the lawyer, you're Gramps over in the corner saying, 'What the hell are you talking about?' You know, there's all those parts. But for something good to come along, I think this 25 miles to normal might be that for me because I'm playing an actor. I'm playing an actor who was an action star who now is debased to selling uh, compresso knee pads. You know, I've had a lot of I've kicked a lot of butt in my day, but after a while, those little aches and pains start to add up on you. That's when I hurt, you know. So I'm doing that now, and there's a poignancy in who he has become,
Mm.
especially in his relationship with his family, because he was this big star, and they're divorced, and you know he's starting to see the sunset. And so I that's a great journey for a character. And when something like that comes along, it's like I just want to be able to do something, and you don't get the opportunity to touch people all the time in some basic human way. Now it happened in Long Time Companion for
Mm.
about a 2-minute scene that I had, letting my lover go. And when something like that comes along, it's pure gold because Arthur Miller, who I got to work with, and I told him, "You're the reason I'm an actor." He
Mm.
wrote something that I still remember in college, and I say this all the time. So it's, you know, I'm getting a little sick of saying this in interviews, but he wrote this and it went, there's a certain immortality involved in acting that comes not through the nominations or the awards, but through the knowledge that an actor carries with him to his dying day, that on a certain afternoon in a dusty and empty theater, he cast a shadow that was not himself, but a distillation of everything he had ever thought or imagined. All the unsingable heart song that the ordinary man may feel but never utter, he gives voice to.
Mm.
And in so doing, he somehow joins the ages. And I thought, that's what I want to do. And we all want the opportunity to do that. And it comes along so rarely for an actor to be able to touch something that reaches everybody on a primal level.
Yeah. Wow. Which kind of, I was going to ask you if you were to say what you would want your legacy to be.
But did a good job, you know, who took care of his family, who raised good kids. That's good.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, sometimes the simplicity of something,
Last words my
that can
mother
be
said.
enough, you know?
Yeah. The last words my mother said to me were, "Do good work." So that's what I'd like to be my legacy. You know, he did good work.
Well, Bruce, you have done good work.
Well, thank you, my darling.
Yes. And I really appreciate you coming and spending this time with me and in extension sharing your life and your career with all of we have incredibly loyal fans, longtime fans of the show who
Yeah. Well,
are,
it's you
yeah.
certainly have grown up into a beautiful woman too.
Thank
I'd
you.
love to see that.
Thank you. Well, I hope that, we still have many years ahead of us. So I hope we get to
Yeah.
team up on something
Well,
else
that
in
would
the
be
future.
good. You
Yeah.
put it down, I'll pick it up.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with me and just having a chance to catch up. It's very special to me. So that, that
Thank you,
whenever I have
Judy.
reached out to you over the years, you have always responded, no matter
Well,
what big film you're currently in. And,
well,
you're just a genuine person, nice person. And, those are always a pleasure to have in one's life. So
Well, thank you. Thank you, dear. And any of your TV brethren and sisterins and families and mothers that you see around, give them my best.
I will definitely do that. Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me for this final part of my conversation with Bruce Davison. What fun to hear about his career and his life and what's ahead for him and all of that. I will rejoin you with more behind the scenes of the Waltons about episodes, more of your questions in a segment of Ask Judy. If you're enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.